Hi Gemini, this is Lee at Fresh Astrology. How are you? So we are talking about your sign, some of the traits of your sign, and going a little deeper if possible. So welcome. If you want to ask me questions, you can go to my Facebook page, Fresh Astrology, and you can email me at freshastrology@gmx.com. You may also go to my website and purchase a reading or a coaching session. I have one course that still has room in it in January 2019. If you want to participate in that, I'm teaching you how to become a coach and apply that to the type of consulting an astrologer does, or a tarot card practitioner, or a psychic. It's one thing to have the technical side down of how to do an astrology chart, or a tarot deck for that matter, or the technical way, or whatever method a psychic has. That's one set of skills. Another set of skills is the coaching set of skills, which allows the astrologer, in my case, to act more like a coach and to have a whole other bag of tools to help someone. It's, if you want to be seen and to feel more like a healer than just a technician, then this is the right course for you. And you can go find that on my website. I'll have all the links below. Also, if you're a woman over 40 and you have a business or want to start a business, join Tribe, also linked below. So let's get going with the Gemini traits. So Gemini, excuse me, my nose is itchy. You are symbolized by the twins, and it reflects several things about your personality. One is the mercurial nature. So you're ruled by Mercury, and mercurial is the adjective that we would use to describe you. And it to me, it shows, the twins show the ability of the mind to see things from two brains, from two sets of eyes, from two sets of ears, to hear and understand and take in information as though you were two people, because you can process and take in so much more than this average person and do it more quickly. You just have a very capable brain and the ability to jump around quickly and grasp varying concepts more quickly than others. You can see the relationship between two things more quickly and more adeptly than others. So you just have a brilliant mind. I know a lot of Geminis, and you really don't want to get in an argument with a Gemini, because they will easily want to take you on and debate. You're a strong debater, strong in your setting up your arguments. I think Geminis would make excellent attorneys, although they might get bored by a case if they had to stick with it for too long. One thing that characterizes a Gemini is with that quick mind, and the mind doesn't want to settle. It wants to keep moving around. You do get bored easily, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's good to know about yourself. It's good to know about yourself that you get bored easily, and that it's not the fault of the situation or the person. It's just your mind. Your mind does that, and it's good to find ways to cope with that, where one is not assigning blame. And I think the older Geminis get, the better they get at that. There's something very childlike about a Gemini. They have the charisma of a child. Even when they're at advanced ages, they have this youthful spirit. I think it has to do with the dominance of Mercury and the quick mind, and they just have this sparkle. You tend to have a sparkle in your eye, and a kind of charisma that benefits you in life. You tend to, whether you like being in crowds and at cocktail parties or not, you tend to do very well jumping from conversation to conversation, jumping into a conversation that other people are having. you tend to blend and thrive in a crowd, even if it's not your cup of tea. You know, you may be one of the Geminis who doesn't like to go to parties and doesn't like crowds, but at the same time, if you're forced to do it, you're very good. Because there's some signs that aren't. So you have to understand, and it's hard for Geminis to understand that we're not all as quick as you are. We're not all as gifted in the way that you are gifted. And so you may think, well, everybody can do this, or this is nothing special, but what you take for granted is some talent that not everybody has. There are people who also don't like going to cocktail parties or being in crowds, who just stand there and don't say anything or don't know what to say. You are never at a loss for words. Even if inside yourself you feel at a loss for words, you somehow just jump in. And that's due to the Mercury and to the twins. You just find, like if one of your twins can't do it, the other one can. It's really like having the power of two mouths, you know, four eyes, four ears, you know, everything times two. You have probably heard, if you paid attention to reading about Gemini, that sometimes it will seem like a Gemini has more than one personality, and you don't know always which one you're going to get. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde may have been written, you know, about Gemini. Of course, real life Geminis, it's not as dramatic a change always, although it can seem, you know, if you're in a relationship with a Gemini, it can sometimes seem dramatic if you get to know one side of the Gemini and then suddenly they flip to the other. It can be a bit of a, you know, you have to adjust because you think you know the person and then suddenly you don't know who this other person is. But it doesn't make a Gemini bad that this is the way it is. It's just a part of who they are. And once you get accustomed to that is the way they are, you just accept it, right? Or not, but that's a part of a Gemini. It's part of what makes you special and engaging and charismatic, but it can also be something that unsettles you. Usually the person who flips a mood quickly, such as a Gemini, it unsettles the Gemini most. It can unsettle people around a Gemini, but usually the Gemini is the one feeling the mood change. So you can imagine, if you're not a Gemini and you're watching this, but if you are a Gemini, you know what I mean. That mood change is not frivolous. It's something you feel. Your mood has just flipped a switch. And I think it's very unsettling for the Gemini. And then I think when that happens, it can be scary and irritating and cause a Gemini to feel like, no, I think Siri's trying to talk to me.
I found something on the web for big, scary, and furious because of Gemini feel like.
Isn't that hilarious? Okay. My phone, we're turning you off. Siri wanted to get in the conversation. That is so Gemini. I don't know how, but it is. That is hilarious. That is so Gemini. I'll figure out why, but that was very funny. That was very Mercury, because here we have a machine that talks, that wanted to jump in the conversation. It's as though my phone is a Gemini. I think it is. All right. That was hilarious. So the tarot card that I pulled for you guys, and I didn't pull it randomly, I carefully selected. I have been taught tarot by two different people, who, one a historian of tarot and one who's had tarot in the family for generations, multiple generations, and have learned, you know, by watching them and being in a class actually with the historian. And sorry, my nose is so itchy. So I do feel like I have some scope on the tarot, but it wasn't the thing I chose to do. I don't do it often for myself or for others. In fact, I don't even have a deck right now, but I do understand the card system and the symbols. So I've chosen the Hierophant for Gemini because of the learning because of the bookishness, because of the direct association with language and with writing and the dissemination of learning. So that is why I have chosen that card for you. And in the deck I'm looking at, it's actually the Hierophant is depicted in an unusual way. Usually you see kind of a stodgy old man who looks very stern and like a rule follower. That's a certain way you could look at learning. That's when it depends on the person who's drawing the symbols and deciding what a teacher looks like. Depends a little bit on the society around the person who comes up with the symbolism, painting or drawing. But this particular, whoever did this card has seen learning as a child. And there is something combining in this card, the way they have the child with the Hierophant and the idea of learning, and just the way they've depicted it literally reminds me of Geminis I know. Like the face, the expression, the way this card, the way the child is holding something and trying to learn about it. Reminds me of my daughter, in fact. She would get, when she was very, very young, and you just, even at that age, she could win like a legal argument. But she would take a machine and she would sit there as a child and just start, she would know how to put stuff together and take stuff apart. It was really weird. And she's not even an engineer or anything. I used to joke that she was an engineer when she was little and she didn't like that. But anyway, this child reminds me exactly of people, not just my daughter, but others I know who are Gemini, and the way they get engaged with things and they just get engrossed in trying to figure something out. It's very Gemini. So the Hierophant is about mechanism, avenues of learning and disseminating information. And most Gemini, all Geminis, not just most, all Geminis I know are fascinated with media. And they usually are news junkies or somehow junkies of information. So it may not, for every Gemini, come in the form of political fascination and addiction, because a lot of Geminis I know are addicted to world politics and world happenings. And in general, this is generalized. You can ask a Gemini if you want to know about the goings on the planet, and if you want to know about some distant country and what just happened. If it's an older Gemini who I would say out of college, they probably know something about it. Now again, you have people who have other signs dominating their chart. There's the sun sign, the moon sign, and the rising sign. So you may have a Gemini who also maybe has some Pisces or something else in there that kind of removes them and makes them a little less engaged as sharply with current events. But usually Geminis are very up on current events or some niche in current events. So not all of them are going to be fascinated by the political. Some may be more in terms of like social change, not so much the political part, but more diving into public health or something like that. There's going to be some niche of information that they're going to be like gripped by, and they're going to know a lot about it, and they don't suffer a fool lightly, when they know. But they'd be happy to explain to you. And if you're a Gemini, you know what I mean. People can come to you for information. You're very happy to tell them. And again, I'm not saying that there's no negative. I love my daughter clearly, and I know I can ask her about certain topics and she will tell me, and I will know that she knows what she's talking about. And I've had romantic relationships with Geminis, and I always knew that I could ask about certain topics, and those people would know what to say, and I knew I trusted them. So there's that, but there's more here in this card that I'm looking at, and I think is entering. There is this childlike quality to the Gemini that we haven't explored fully, and it goes to the innocence and the fascination and the wonder of life. And I do think the beauty of a Gemini is that childlike fascination with new discovery and absorbing information. There's something so sweet and innocent about it, and that sense of wonder. I think that's a beautiful part of a Gemini, like, personal makeup. It's as though, I think, to a Gemini, that the world is magic in terms of the information and what you can learn. That is the magic of the world to a Gemini. So what are they here to learn, and how are they helping us? Let's think about that. Well, the hardest thing for a Gemini is to suffer a fool. It's hard for a Gemini to get into a debate with another person who's strong at debating and has a differing opinion or a different set of facts. It's very difficult for a Gemini to, once they're on a track of knowing it all, and often they do know it all, but once they're on that track, it's very, very difficult if someone's coming in with an equally strong set of skills to know stuff and to want to take a position. It can become infuriating for a Gemini not to win the debate or an argument or to have the last word. That's extraordinarily difficult for a Gemini not to have the last word. What else? I think coping with people who, another issue would be coping with people whose mind doesn't operate at the speed of Mercury. I think there can be a little bit of noticing and maybe judging before the Gemini has matured. A little bit of noticing that someone just doesn't seem as bright, and they can have a sense of, I don't know, arrogance is a little strong, but maybe a little arrogance about their own ability to think and know stuff. And it's the arrogance isn't justified, but Geminis do have a clear advantage, I think, learning through life to have compassion for the people who can't think as strongly as you do and who don't know as much as you do. To remove judgment and to have compassion is something that comes with maturity. And when a Gemini can be seen to provide that, when a Gemini learns to show compassion and non-judgment toward others who just aren't as strong mentally, then the Gemini, when people witness that, first of all, it's a very powerful experience for the Gemini to reach that level of maturity. It really changes a Gemini. But beyond that, when others witness a Gemini, even if they don't know your sign, don't know the Gemini sign, but when they witness a Gemini displaying grace and compassion toward people who just don't have the same brain skills in whatever way that is, or who are just not as good at presenting themselves, when a Gemini can respect that and show compassion and grace, it's a powerful lesson for others, because there's just this gut instinct knowledge that everyone has when they can sense without even knowing it in their brain that someone's just displayed an unusual sense of maturity, an uncharacteristic sense of maturity. They just know something powerful has occurred without even understanding why they feel that way. And they can be very moved. Others can be very moved by your grace and compassion in this particular area. Likewise, when a Gemini can, and this is very, very hard for a Gemini to back down in a debate or argument, or when they think they know something. Maybe when they know something, because that's the feeling that the Gemini has, is I know it. But when a Gemini can back down and allow other opinions with a sense of grace and compassion, then that's a powerful skill and experience, actually experientially, for a Gemini to be able to master themselves enough to do that and do it with an open heart is a powerful life transforming experience for a Gemini. And then when a Gemini can display this strength around others, others are aware of how much power this Gemini has in that moment, and they get the lesson on a very, again, it's a very kind of subconscious, unconscious level. People really take in the lesson of that, and it's a kind of magic that you do bring to the world when you master your own challenges and you teach others how to back down, not like doormats, not like weak people, but to allow, it's more like less a backing down, but more an allowing of allowing everyone to have different opinions, but with grace. It's one thing, like a lot of people do this thing where they say, well, let's agree to disagree, or you have your opinion, I have mine. And that's, maybe better than duking it out and like breaking a bottle over someone's head, but it's not, it's kind of a cop-out. It's not really honoring and allowing for someone else's opinion. It's a first step, it's like it's somebody using their words to say that, but it's not necessarily, as we all know, not necessarily a true opening and allowing for, and a respect, true respect for someone else's genuine perception and opinion, or possibly even correctness or rightness. And so when we say let's agree to disagree, it's just a way of ending what could be a battle, but it's not the same as truly making space in one's heart and mind that maybe no one really knows the truth. Maybe what the other person is saying is just as truthful or just as right. This is very hard to do, but it can be done. So that's the task of the Gemini who wants to mature and evolve and gain power, not for power's sake, but gain a sense of something that's hard to describe with words, but it's that wonderful thing that happens when you do evolve and mature, and you really do master something that allows your heart to open and compassion to increase, whatever that feeling is. Some of us have been lucky, hopefully more than some have been lucky to experience that, but every time a Gemini is able to allow for another point of view, even when they're firmly set against it at first, to soften and allow is a very, I can't even emphasize it enough, but that's the thing, that if you master it, it's like you have evolved light years, and then you can just help viscerally people around you. It like lifts all the energy and vibration in a room. So I love it if you can master it, because it would just be good for all of us. All right, what else can we say before we end? You are an air sign because of kind of the you live in your mind, but all the signs share characteristics with some of the other sign categories. So in your case, there's a bit of water. So, and that does speak to your ability to find that compassion and to open your heart. So that's this hidden gift that you do have. But it requires sometimes climbing out of that brain of yours, like climbing down the ladder and getting more into your heart, living more from here. So Happy New Year, and I hope you have a great 2019. I'll see you soon. Bye.